So I wanted to do a video in the wake of Zohran Mamdani being elected. Yes, it's horrible that he is pro-jihad, but for Americans, it's also very problematic that he's a really extreme socialist. And I wanted to say that I am pro-socialism. I am a socialist by nature, but I want to explain what that means. When I was growing up, I really did not like competition. I didn't understand when you sit in a test all by yourself, you get a grade, your best friend gets a grade. No, you should be learning together. And that's actually the way I learned in yeshiva, and I thrived. And I never understood how we were indoctrinated from a very young age to enter a competitive capitalist system where you made a lot of money. It's great for most of the people, let's say. But it wasn't good for me. So at the age of 30, when I moved to Israel, I moved to kibbutz. And oh my gosh, I felt like one of those fish that you catch on a line and he's sitting there gasping for breath, and then you throw him in water and he's celebrating and swimming away. And that's what happened to me when I moved to kibbutz. It made sense to me. Every day I woke up and had breakfast with people who I grew to love. I worked with people I grew to love. The only people I dealt with all day, every day, we were intermingled in every way possible. Their fate, their livelihood, their family was intermingled with me. I loved it, okay? It meant that I worked and didn't necessarily see the fruits of my labor. I didn't get a paycheck. I got because the basis of socialism, and kibbutz know this, is an inherent contradiction. They say equality, from everyone what they can, to everyone what they need. Well, that's not equal. But in a sense, in a very real sense, we all are equal. And I remember there was an amazing woman named Ruth Aviel. And Ruth Aviel explained to me why religious kibbutz. And she explained it like this. The lowest level of charity is when you throw someone some spare change. Okay, very low level. It's good, it's great, do it. Write someone a check. Higher level is when they don't know who you are, you don't know who they are. There are different levels. Supposedly, according to the Rambam, the highest level is when you give someone a job. But there's an even higher level, and that's kibbutz, that's socialism, where a person is maintained. I contribute to the sustenance, to the existence of this person because they are a person. And I learned that pluralism, as they teach it in the West, is a lie. In college campuses, the woke, they teach you left-wing means I grant you the right to be different. No, you don't. I was created different by God. Okay. What we did on religious kibbutz was everyone was different because we needed everyone to be different. I remember there was a young married couple, and the guy was more Torah-oriented than I was. And I was a worker. That's what I'd done my whole life. And so I worked when I was awake. I worked, and I worked hard. And so I would go into the dining hall feeling really proud of myself that I worked. I belong here because I worked. And he didn't work so much. And it kind of irked me. And then I realized, well, I like to go to synagogue and hear the Torah being read. And I can't do that. And I need him to do that. And I looked around and I realized that every person in the community was an irreplaceable gem. They contributed something that no one else could contribute. And if I wanted to be part of this community, I needed them to be different. So in a sense, they were just putting up with me focusing on work. I remember when I wanted to go learn in yeshiva, which is basically taking a vacation for work and having them pay for my education. I went up, I said, well, I want to, a guy actually went learned to yeshiva, and I'm like, well, why does he get it and I don't? So I walked up to the person who ran the dairy where I worked, and I said, he's going to yeshiva, I want to go to yeshiva. And he turned to me and said, actually, we've been waiting for you to ask that. We need you to go to yeshiva and learn more, to be a better Jewish member of this religious community. And I was like, oh, crap. Why didn't they say that before? Why didn't I think of it before? So the basis of socialism is the inherent value of human life and the inherent codependence of a community that requires pluralism, requires a true pluralism where we thrive together because of our differences. And I remember I read once a book on anarchism, which also gets a bad rap. And the author defined anarchism as every person taking individual responsibility rather than delegating authority and delegating responsibility. Every person took individual responsibility. And I saw that in action on kibbutz. It was kind of funny. They would do things like they would lock a room because it had valuable stuff inside, and then they would hide the key, and everyone knew where the key was hidden. Meaning, if you were in the community enough to know where the key was, well, feel free. I loved horses, and very early on, I wanted to ride horses, and there was a whole group of young people who rode horses, and it was always like, oh, can you get permission to ride horses? And I went to the head of the kibbutz, the guy who was the secretary running the practical matters, and I asked him, he didn't have any, he ate the same cucumbers I did for breakfast. I asked him, can I ride horses? And he said, yeah, why are you asking? And I said, because they said I need to get signed on to the insurance. And he laughed at me, he said, yeah, that's what they would say. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, there is no insurance for riding horses. You're going out to the fields, you're riding like in the Wild West. So I said, what's the deal with the insurance? He said, what's the insurance? The insurance is that if, God forbid, you fall off and hurt yourself and become incapacitated for the rest of your life, you are the person that we will want to take care of. And I also saw that in action. There were literally people who had been crippled, and the kibbutz took care of them. There was no questions asked. Families who had special needs children. The community helped them with their special needs, and oh my gosh, they were my children. And I felt like a proud father. It really brought a part of myself to life because of that community. And that's socialism. That being said, whenever I hear American socialists talk, Bernie Sanders got kicked off kibbutz because kibbutz means you are working for the other people. And if you're motivated by love, and if you're really working for the other people, you work really hard. He didn't. Zohran Mamdani, he's never supported anyone. If you're that kind of socialist, what you're saying is, I am going to tell you what to do with the fruits of your labor. No, you're not. I'm not getting on that train. So what I wanted to say is, on some level, we're all socialists. We choose to coexist with the people we choose to coexist with. For most people, it's their family. And not having that basic level of socialism is an illness. If you have a father who is not willing to support his family, or is only willing to support his family to a certain degree, that's an illness. It's a spiritual illness. If you have a person who wants to help everyone, the Jewish theology discusses that. They call it, it's also a form of illness. You do have to have a certain level of differentiation. So, I am a socialist, but I'm not that kind of socialism. I don't think that they know how to define socialism properly. They're Marxists. Marxism is not socialism. Marxism is a mind control, a social control. And I'm an anarchist. I don't want you to tell me. I will take responsibility for what's important for me. You are not giving me the right or privilege to be who I am. I have that God-given privilege, and he's the only one who I have to answer to. And he made me different for the sake of all of humanity. And that's my form of socialism. Zohran Mamdani, I don't buy it. So I am a socialist, but I am a religiously small-scale socialist. I do not believe in politically enforced socialism. That's where socialism always went wrong. When it was a power trip enforced by some kind of political entity. Because what's politics? The government. What is a government? A government has the monopoly on violence. And that was one of the beautiful things in America. Cops can shoot me. The army can shoot a lot of people. I can get a gun, but I better be careful who I shoot. Cops can shoot me for not following the rules. I can't shoot other people for not following the rules unless they threaten me. That's a rule they can't break. Politically enforced socialism is not socialism. And I am dead set against that. If you want to form a community, a loving community of coexistence, where you treasure each individual for being different, well, that's a family. If you want to enlarge your family, then it must be done. And it's very difficult because you have to say, I'm less important, and I don't see the fruits of my labor. We see the fruits of my labor, and that's more important. And that's something that resonates with me personally very strongly. Okay, so I am a proud socialist. I don't think Zohran Mamdani is. I don't think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is. I don't think all these people who claim to be social democrats or Democrat socialists, I don't think they are. Another thing about socialism, when I was talking about anarchism, kibbutz had a lot of groups, a lot of organizations, a lot of committees, and there were people who had this function, this responsibility, this authority. And it'd be funny, I'd be walking around in the kibbutz going off to do some business, to do whatever I had to do. It's a small, closed community. You don't leave the gate unless you really have to. There's everything you need is right there. And then you'd see these two people sitting on their bicycles. They had these one-speed, old-school bicycles. And they'd be talking. And they'd be wearing their kibbutz work clothes. And all of a sudden you realize that this was the head of this committee, this was the head of this committee, and they're having a committee meeting, face to face. And I realized that if I wanted something like a musical instrument, or if I wanted to use a car or something like that, well, if I happen to see the person in charge of it, I go ask them. It's a different approach to authority in socialism. In socialism, since we're all equal, yeah, you have the responsibility, which means you can and are even expected to do certain things. But when we meet on our bicycles in the middle of the road on our way to have our cucumbers for breakfast, eye to eye, we're on the same footing. There is no Washington, D.C. in socialism. So all these people who run for elected office as socialists, they're kind of going against their own principles. So I'd like to suggest that socialism is a lovely thing, and it does work. The kibbutz movement has problems, and I think that's because it's really difficult to subdue and silence that part of yourself. That's ego. It was easy for me. I had a problem with not enough ego. But that's why I'm a socialist, and I'm okay with that, and that's why Zohran Mamdani is in. Thank you. Be blessed.